Kosuke Nagaki, a renowned Japanese billionaire, was an extremely passionate man. Throughout his 87-year life, he managed to share his bed with over 4,000 women. Kosuke could never resist the charms of young, voluptuous beauties and lost his mind over every skirt that crossed his path. In 2017, the heart of the elderly Nagaki was conquered by the enchanting 22-year-old Saki Sudo. The billionaire was over the moon with happiness when the girl reciprocated his feelings. Soon, the smitten Kosuke proposed to his young sweetheart. However, he could not even imagine that by tying the knot with the beautiful Saki, he was essentially signing his own death warrant. This story unfolded in the small Japanese town of Tanabe, located in the Wakayama prefecture. The population of Tanabe is about 70,000 residents, who mostly earn their living through fishing and agriculture. This is where the Nagaki family resided. Kosuke Nagaki was born on April 13, 1941. He grew up in a large, loving family where, besides him, there were 6 other children. From childhood, the boy stood out among his siblings for his restless and rebellious nature. Kosuke did poorly in school and was a real outcast in his class. Eventually, he dropped out of university to help his parents, who owned a small wine shop. The Nagaki parents never belonged to the wealthy, so they gratefully accepted their son's help. While working in the family business, Kosuke became obsessed with the idea of big money. In just a couple of years, he managed to multiply the store's profits several times over. Years passed, and Kosuke's parents grew old and passed away. Their inheritance was divided equally among the 7 children. Nagaki immediately invested his share in developing his own business. He started lending money at exorbitant interest rates, effectively becoming a loan shark. At that time, there were no restrictions on loan interest rates in Japan. Kosuke's income grew rapidly in geometric progression. He shamelessly profited from the misfortunes of others, collecting debts by hook or by crook. Frankly speaking, Nagaki made a fortune on other people's debts. Naturally, such a business did not inspire enthusiasm among his brothers and sisters. Conflicts often flared up between relatives over Kosuke's questionable activities. Nagaki constantly sought new ways to multiply his capital. He bought up scrap metal and even sold condoms, delivering the goods personally to customers' homes. Kosuke was an entrepreneur to the core. However, judging from old Japanese sources, only loan sharking brought him truly substantial profits. Already in adulthood, having amassed considerable wealth from debts, Nagaki seriously engaged in construction and real estate. He also opened a chain of stores selling alcoholic beverages. However, even here, Kosuke was not averse to machinations. Once, he was even held criminally liable for tax evasion. As for his personal life, Nagaki was an inveterate womanizer and philanderer. He simply could not live without female attention and considered sex to be the main purpose of existence. Even when Kosuke was selling condoms, he often suggested to his female customers to continue their acquaintance in a more intimate setting. Nagaki had a reputation as a real Casanova in his hometown. Sometimes the billionaire paid women for sex, but at times their relationship was limited to a game of seducer and victim. Rumors circulated that over his long life, Kosuke had been in bed with over 4,000 ladies. He spent 3 billion yen on these amorous adventures, which is equivalent to about $20 million. In one television interview, Nagaki admitted, "When I meet a tall, sensual woman to my taste, I immediately tell her that I want to invite her on a date and have sex with her. If the lady agrees, I give her 400,000 yen or $3,000. Kosuke also said that he loved throwing lavish parties at nightclubs. He threw money around left and right, but at the same time, he did not forget to collect from his debtors. In 1998, there was even an attempt on Nagaki's life. Due to another financial scam, Kosuke was nearly stabbed to death by one of his old acquaintances. In 2016, that same Nagaki wrote and published an autobiographical book titled Don Juan from Kishu. In it, he recounted in detail the story of his rise to the heights of wealth. Thanks to a crazy advertising campaign, the Casanova's memoirs became a real bestseller throughout Japan. As of 2017, Kosuke's fortune had reached such proportions that he could afford absolutely any whim or fancy. The billionaire bathed in luxury, showering his favorites with generous gifts in exchange for affection. Nagaki owned a whole fleet of chic cars and a flotilla of yachts. He lived in several luxurious mansions and flew business class all over the world. It seemed that the entire universe revolved around his person. Despite his advanced age, at 77, Kosuke remained a sexually active man. At the same time, he never smoked or used drugs or other stimulants. In 2017, Nagaki settled in one of his spacious houses. His faithful companion was his beloved dog named Eva. Kosuke often joked that she would inherit all his millions after his death. Before meeting Saki, Nagaki had been married twice. But both marriages were short-lived and ended in painful divorces. And then, in the fall of 2017, young Saki Sudo appeared on Kosuke's life path. The 22-year-old girl was a whole 55 years younger than the billionaire and could well have been his granddaughter. The first meeting between Nagaki and Sudo occurred by chance at Haneda Airport. Kosuke immediately noticed the charming Saki in the crowd and swiftly rose from his seat to attract her attention. The billionaire invited the girl to the waiting lounge and offered to have coffee with him. The couple hit it off, and just a few months after their acquaintance, Kosuke and Saki were officially married. Nagaki's relatives were tapping their temples, wondering how their elderly relative had lost his mind over a young lady. But the love-struck Kosuke was indifferent to gossip. Sudo had turned his head, and the level-headed entrepreneur was ready to marry the beauty, barely knowing her. Saki Sudo was born in 1996 in the large city of Sapporo, located in Hokkaido Prefecture, Japan. The girl grew up in a well-off, even wealthy family. But, like Kosuke, Saki was never an excellent student. At school, she often became a victim of bullying and ridicule from her peers. Because of this, Sudo grew up to be a quiet, shy, and unremarkable girl who tried not to stand out unnecessarily. Everything changed when Saki entered her teenage years. Her parents began buying her expensive designer items, branded clothing, handbags, and jewelry. Suddenly, numerous friends began to flock around Sudo. The girl quickly grasped a simple truth: with money, you can get anything you want. From that time on, she was simply obsessed with wealth. Saki enrolled in makeup courses and then decided to conquer the modeling business. But the only thing she managed to achieve in this field was to star in a few adult films. Later, Sudo moved to Tokyo, considering the capital a more promising city for her career. In the metropolis, Saki got a job as a cosmetologist, but even here, luck turned away from her. In Tokyo, Sudo had an affair with the owner of several bars. The girl dated this wealthy man solely for money. But in the fall of 2017, having met billionaire Kosuke Nagaki, Saki left her businessman lover without hesitation. After all, the fortune of her new suitor was many times greater than that of her previous chosen one. In February 2018, Kosuke Nagaki and Saki Sudo officially became husband and wife. The happy groom promised his young bride that she would be completely freed from housework. Cooking, laundry, cleaning, all this would fall on the shoulders of a hired housekeeper. In addition, Kosuke assigned Saki a monthly salary of 1 million yen for personal expenses. At first, the newlyweds enjoyed their honeymoon and each other's presence. They were simply inseparable. The media even managed to capture on camera how the happy couple walked together through the city streets. Next to the pair, Kosuke's beloved dog, a pug named Eva, ran merrily. Nagaki and Sudo often dined at restaurants and drove around the city in a snow-white Mercedes. It seemed that the elderly billionaire had finally found the perfect recipe for happiness in his later years, a beloved young wife always by his side. But this idyll did not last long. Just 3 months after the wedding, 77-year-old Kosuke was found unconscious in his own bedroom. A few hours later, he died in the hospital without ever regaining consciousness. It is important to mention that 18 in the afternoon did she go out to run a few errands for the master. From 4 to 6 p.m., Nagaki was on the first floor of the house with his young wife Saki. And after 6 p.m., he went up to his office on the second floor to make some business calls to his partners. Around the same time, the housekeeper returned to the mansion. She sat down next to Saki, and the women began watching television together on the first floor. Around 8 p.m., they suddenly heard a dull thud from the upper rooms, as if something had fallen or hit something. The maid asked Saki to go upstairs and check on Kosuke. But the billionaire's young wife did not react in any way to the servant's request. Sudo just shrugged her shoulders and continued watching TV. Around 10 p.m., the worried housekeeper again approached Saki about Kosuke. Then both women finally went up to the second floor and entered the master's bedroom. A chilling scene opened before their eyes. Nagaki lay unconscious on the floor. And just a couple of hours later, the billionaire died in the hospital without ever coming to his senses. The investigators almost immediately dismissed the version of suicide. Recently, Kosuke had been actively involved in organizing the funeral of his beloved dog Eva. So it was unlikely that during this period he would have thought of taking his own life. Only 2 people fell under suspicion of involvement in Nagaki's sudden death, the housekeeper and the billionaire's young wife. It is worth noting that the maid had worked in Kosuke's house for 10 years. They had a fairly friendly relationship, so the servant had no motive to kill her employer. It was a completely different matter with 22-year-old Saki Sudo, whom Nagaki had married just 3 months ago. In the event of the elderly man's death, his young wife would inherit considerable wealth, about 5 billion yen or $35 million. Saki herself reacted to Kosuke's passing with surprising indifference. At her husband's funeral, she showed no signs of grief or regret. Sudo constantly sat staring at her smartphone screen and even played online games during the memorial service. After bidding farewell to the deceased, Saki laughed and joked with the guests as if nothing had happened. Looking at the young widow, one got the impression that she was even glad about Nagaki's death. Accusations immediately poured in on Saki from all sides. Many suspected that she had married the old billionaire solely for his capital. And when Kosuke suddenly died, almost no one had any doubts that his young wife was somehow involved in this. Sudo flatly refused to communicate with the press and comment on the situation. Once, an enraged journalist even attacked Saki with his fists. But despite numerous public accusations, the police did not have enough evidence to arrest Sudo for her husband's murder. Investigators even exhumed the body of Eva the dog to check her remains for poison. Unfortunately, more than 3 weeks had passed since the death of Kosuke's beloved pet, so the test results were inconclusive. The investigation into Nagaki's death reached a dead end for 3 long years. During this time, detectives were unable to find any substantial leads or evidence of Saki's guilt. The situation changed dramatically only in 2021. Then the police received information that Sudo was preparing documents to move abroad, to the United Arab Emirates. The investigators finally realized that if the suspect left Japan, she could disappear forever without a trace. So law enforcement began active measures. In May 2021, Saki Sudo was arrested on suspicion of murdering Kosuke Nagaki. The girl was placed in a pre-trial detention cell. In parallel, detectives conducted an additional investigation, during which they managed to uncover several important pieces of evidence. In particular, during interrogation, Saki insisted that from 4 to 6 p.m. on the fatal day, she never went up to the second floor of the Nagaki house. But data from a fitness app on Sudo's smartphone indicated the opposite. So at the moment when Kosuke became ill, his young wife was right there beside him. In addition, investigators were able to establish that a few weeks before the deaths of Nagaki and his dog Eva, Saki had been actively searching the internet for information about methamphetamine and other psychoactive substances. Moreover, contacts of individuals who could sell these prohibited were found on her computer. Experts discovered traces of narcotics on the kitchen floor and in the vacuum cleaner at Kosuke's mansion. And surveillance camera footage captured Saki meeting with a well-known dealer in their city shortly before the billionaire's death. A close friend of Nagaki confessed that a couple of weeks before the tragic events, Kosuke had complained to him about his relationship with Saki. The billionaire told his companion that he intended to divorce his young wife. Kosuke even asked his friend to be there at the moment when he would inform Sudo about his decision. In addition, it turned out that another woman had already appeared in Nagaki's life. And 2 months after the 77-year-old man's death, Saki convened an emergency meeting of shareholders of the deceased's company in his own home. At that meeting, she appointed herself chairman of the board. The young widow set herself an annual salary of $5 million and additionally wrote out a bonus of $400,000. Having received these funds, Sudo planned to flee Japan and settle in Dubai. Fortunately, law enforcement managed to arrest the suspect in time. At the moment, the trial in the case of Kosuke Nagaki's murder is still ongoing. For 3 years now, Saki Sudo has been in the Wakayama City Detention Center, located in the prefecture of the same name. Despite fairly convincing evidence of the young widow's guilt, experts believe that proving her guilt will not be so easy. A considerable amount of time has passed, so confirming the fact of Kosuke's poisoning is now extremely difficult. Sudo herself continues to insist on her complete innocence. Saki categorically denies any involvement in the death of her 77-year-old husband. The young woman asserts that she sincerely loved her much older chosen one and would never have caused him harm. As of today, all the assets of the late Kosuke Nagaki remain frozen. It is still unclear who will ultimately inherit the billionaire's multi-million-dollar estate. Kosuke's brothers and sisters hope that the court will finally establish the truth in this tangled case. The relatives of the deceased businessmen demand that Saki Sudo be punished to the fullest extent of the law. However, whether the Japanese Themis will be able to prove the guilt of the Black Widow, or whether she will remain at large, is unknown. Time will tell. This story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Be sure to like and subscribe to support our channel. Thanks for watching and bye everyone.